know that when we get to the day of the draft, I think we'll talk like this without you. Talk about this with you. I meant to say. But I don't know that I've asked you 2 weeks out. You got a favorite idea for the Bills at this point at 30?
My favorite idea is to if they stay there, is to draft the best available defensive tackle. I just think that is what they need to do. But I'm not dismissing drafting a corner at that spot. I think it's one or the other. So let me rephrase. The best idea for the Buffalo Bills is to pick one of those two positions and no other position. That's it. Like, to me, there's no other position they should be picking at number 30 than either defensive tackle or corner. But I think this draft has good enough defensive tackles that you're going to find a really good player at number 30, which is why I like that position a little bit more. Mm-hmm. But I do think that corner can be in the mix depending on who's there, right? If someone you literally like starts falling, that's fine. But I think it's got to be a defensive tackle or a corner. And I think you have to find a defensive tackle that fits and checks the boxes that, to me, what the Bills have kind of been talking about, and McDermott especially, which is bigger, stronger, stout, play the one technique, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody who is really an upgrade over Daquan Jones, let's be honest. That's really what they're looking for. They need to pair somebody with Ed Oliver. Ed Oliver is so much more at his best when he has someone who can be that guy. And Daquan Jones has been a nice player for the Bills, but he's not that type of player to really anchor your defensive line going forward.
Maybe he was before he got hurt against Jacksonville, but it seems like he's never been the same, and now he's 34. Right. Do you think if it goes right in the draft that he could be a sneaky June 1st cut candidate, or do you think they would have done that already?
I think they would have done that. I have to look at his numbers on that. I think, but it's certainly possible depending on how things go. I think what might save him in that scenario could be Larry Ogunjobi and his suspension. Right? I mean, like they go out and sign the guy, and they didn't know when they get the guy, they don't really know about the suspension until all of a sudden he brings it to him. And obviously we know how that worked out. They wound up signing him, but that really could have an impact here. So it's funny. I really like Derek Harmon of Oregon. I think he's kind of the guy that fits here, right? Something like that. Mm-hmm. I just went to Derek Harmon's profile at NFL.com, Lance Zierlein. His NFL comparison, Daquan Jones. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Right. Yeah, I like that idea plenty. I do, to me it's close, right? I mean, I think corner, even with the Ogunjobi suspension looming and Jones's age, I still feel like corner, like there's guys here that they can plug in to play at defensive tackle. I guess Dane Jackson is that at corner, but man, that's a pretty low ceiling, I think. So corner feels more urgent. It feels very much like the Elam Benford year here coming off the 21 season, right? Was that the 22 draft? Where, we went through the whole offseason, and Bean even said after they picked Elam, I heard you. I heard everybody talk about corner. I feel like that is kind of repeating itself here this offseason. I suppose they're still, with 2 weeks to go, they could grab a guy. Maybe they will wait to pivot to a veteran once the draft comes and goes, and they see what they end up, what kind of haul they get, right? If they get a guy or a couple guys they really like, that they feel like they can count on, like somebody's going to be able to man that spot, then there's no need to go bring Rasul Douglas back or pivot to someone else, Asante Samuel Jr. or whatever. By the way, Sal, as a sidebar, is he just wrecked physically, Samuel Jr.? I feel like it's amazing that he's still on the market.
It feels like that. There's been some stuff coming out about shoulder and neck. You know, and that's always something you have to consider. He's never been a super willing participant in the run game, and I think that really matters to the Bills. They need people who are at least willing, even if they're not. I mean, Kyrie Elam, I don't think was great at it, but I think they saw that he was at least willing to try and go tackle. He wasn't great and physical, and it became a problem that he wasn't able to do it, and that was part of the issue. But I think you have to be willing, and I don't know if they feel Asante Samuel is or anybody, and I think that's why he's still out there. All right, so I'm leaving, and I'll be back in a week. I'll leave you with these thoughts, and I think this is what you can chew on. Just putting everything together, kind of, listening and all that kind of stuff. Number one, out of their 3 picks, Bulldog, they have 3 picks in the first 2 rounds. I would be really surprised as I sit here today if they weren't all defense. I think they're all defense.
All defense.
First 3 picks. All defense. I would be surprised if they go wide receiver unless it's somebody they really love. But as I sit here today, it's all defense to me. Number 2, I'm thinking about what they said about Larry Ogunjobi. Why did they sign him? there was nobody really left on the market for them to sign. That gets me to they're drafting a defensive tackle. There's no other veterans out there they're bringing in. That is not the same at corner. Corner is Russell Douglas is there. Stephon Gilmore's out there. Heck, Tre'Davious White is out there. These guys know your system.
Right.
I'm not advocating and saying, but like what the Bills have always operated in the secondary for people who understand their system. Right? It's not the same necessarily up front as it is on the back end. So that's why I get to defensive tackle is more of a priority than corner because you can probably bridge the gap with a veteran as you bring a corner along. But I do think they need a young corner who they think they can compete for a spot.
Get a load of this guy. He comes with an interesting social media question for me specifically about why Paul Hamilton doesn't show up as being taggable in tweets when I tag Paul, and now you're leaving me. You're setting up like the next hour of the show by dropping that. You're the best, dude. All right, much love. Enjoy your time away, and we'll reconnect next Thursday, buddy.
You got it, buddy.
I don't want to exaggerate. It's not a Sal bomb. It's not a Woj bomb here. But Sal left us. He's got a break coming up here. Won't be back until next Thursday's draft special on our show. We'll have Sal and all of our guys, Nate Geary, Sneaky Joe, and Jeremy, will all take turns joining us to rap about the draft. So Sal's got time off between now and then, and he left us at the end of his segment with he would be surprised if the Bills did not use all three of those picks. What did Connor say there? It's 30, 56, and 62? Are those the 2 seconds? I don't have that memorized yet. I by the draft, I will. But I think that's what it is. Anyway, it's around that. All three picks on defense. How do you think Bills fans would react to that? How do you feel about it? 803-0550. Would you be surprised, like Sal's saying, if the Bills didn't use all three of those picks on defenders? I think that's an interesting conversation. I get it. I think it could be called. You could make the case. I think it could. I mean, Sal does this for a living. He's not just coming out of left field with this. Plenty of mock drafts, I think, have gone that route. I just wonder. I wonder how. No third round pick, too, as it stands right now, right? So you're going into the NFL draft with Josh Allen as your quarterback, and your skill set players are just what's here now. It's not to say you couldn't find Khalil Shakir in round 4 or round 5 like you originally found Khalil Shakir in round 5 a few years ago, but not using any of your day 1 or 2 assets. And again, they have the 2 second rounders that sort of buffers not having a third round pick as of now. Maybe the Bills can find a way to package some of the stuff they've got for Saturday and get into round 3 at some point. I don't know. But as it stands, if they don't, because I think they'll move around, maybe even, first round, second round because of the extra stuff they have, but not like really aggressively. And I don't think they'll go add a pick. Like a third. I don't think they have the ammunition. I don't think a bunch of junk from the 6th round gets you a third round pick, probably, right? Is all I'm saying here. And junk is pretty pejorative, but you know what I'm saying. I don't know that they've got that. What they have is, hey, we're sitting here at, whatever pick in the 4th round, and there's a guy we really like and we want to move up 2 spots. Will you take one of these 6s off our hands? Yeah, like that. I think they'll move like that. So I'll be stunned if they use all 10 picks. But still, if they've got those 3 on Thursday and Friday, and that's it, and they use them all on defense, and then I don't pick again until Saturday, I don't know, man. I'm not sure I myself can get behind that. I'm not completely closed off to the idea of them using their first pick on a receiver. If it fell right, like if there's a guy they really like, and for whatever reason, he manages to make it down the board that far, and they pounce. Because while I think you look at the team on the defensive side of the ball, of course, they need another starting corner. Duh. They need to replenish defensive tackle. You could even say they need a starter at defensive tackle, at the very least, a rotational player, because I'm not loving what I've seen out of Daquan Jones for the last year plus since he came back off that injury late in the 23 season. Last season was just wasn't up to snuff, I don't think. So, like, Ed Oliver eats all the heat there because he's got the bigger contract and he's the younger player, 9th overall, supposed to be more of an impact player. He's been somewhat of a letdown, roller coaster ride kind of guy, up and down. There's days you really love him, days you're just like, where is he? But I think the bigger issue they've got is next to him. So I totally get that. Beyond that, I mean, who are my dangerous players on offense? I mean, I think there is a need there. I say it every day. I think it's okay. They've told us for years here. I remember one of the first meetings I ever had about doing this job, way back in the black and white television era. Be repetitive. They lost 2 receivers in free agency. I mean, Cooper still hasn't signed. I guess that's in the window if you want it. But they lost 2, and they brought in 1. So, and one of the ones they lost was the closest they had to a true number 1 receiver, which they went out and got actively on the market during the season when they got into the season and realized, everybody eats, looks good on the billboard, but maybe we need to do something else here. So they did. Forget what the stats are for Cooper and what kind of impact he had, again, statistically mostly, because, you can argue that he opened things up for other guys and, their offense still flourished and, okay, fine. But they went out and got a number 1 receiver to add to the team. It's irrelevant what the end result was. They felt they had the need. So they've not replaced that player. I mean, they just have not. So that's where I think receiver and the idea of them spending all 3 of those early picks, 2 seconds and a first, on defense, I'm not sure I could get 100% behind it. I still think there is a need at receiver. Michael always say when he's here, that would be 3 years in a row you've used a premium asset on a pass catcher because of Coleman last year and Kincaid the year before. I get that. I still think it's called for. I mean, they have, to me, a need for that player. And it's not to say that they draft, Matthew Golden falls to 30 and he shows up and turns into their number 1 receiver. But he'd play outside right away and, hopefully ascend at some point to becoming a guy that could be a go-to guy for you. They have a need, and I don't know where else they're going to find it. I mean, they can, maybe they'll take some flyers on the Chase Claypools of the world again this off season as we get into the spring or summer. Marquez, Valdez, Scantling, anyone? I mean, they tried their hand at that. KJ Hamler is still here. They have a need. That's it. I mean, you hear the names I'm saying here? So I think I would object to all 3 of those picks being used on defense. As much as I've been convinced, like they need to upgrade on defense, and they definitely need a starting corner. Maybe you can find that still in free agency, like Sal just said. I don't know, man. All 3 of those picks on one side of the ball would be, I think, a tough look for me to get behind. Devin is up first this segment. Hi, Devin. Thank you for calling. You're on the air here on WGR.
Hi, how you guys doing today?
Good, man.
I think I heard you talking about that you wouldn't be surprised if we used our first 3 picks on a defender.
Hold it. Sal said that. I'm arriving at the conclusion that I don't think I don't want to do that, and I wouldn't be surprised if they picked if they picked a receiver at 30 or one of the second rounders myself. But Sal thinks they'll use all 3 on defense.
I wouldn't be surprised if I feel like I dove a lot into a lot of the corners that we have into this draft and a lot of the receivers and a lot of the defensive tackles. I think one of our first 3 picks definitely will be a defensive tackle, but don't be surprised if we blow through them first 3 picks and we don't draft a corner, because I feel like there's a lot of decent safeties in the draft that we can pick up. But at the same time, there's a lot of corners that are overlooked this year, this upcoming draft, that I feel like will fall into the later rounds. There's a kid from Iowa, corner turn receiver. He's like 6'4". I watched some of the tape. He's very coachable. The Siobhan Reveal kid can drop. I just feel like that we can get a lot of corners later in the draft, especially if there's a run on corners at the end of the first round.
I like the Ravel idea a lot. That's the kid from East Carolina. Great. He's like 6'2", long arms, had a knee injury in September, so he's coming off an ACL. And if you trust that he's going to recover and, be ready, then I'm all for that. And that, I've seen him mocked at 30, like that the reason he might be available at 30 is the injury. But maybe more realistically, he's a Friday pick, and that frees you up. I agree on defensive tackle. Like, I'm not telling you they're not going to pick a D tackle with their first pick. I think it's corner or that, I think, are the two choices there. That I would be surprised if the first pick is not one of those two positions sitting here right now. But all three, boy, I don't know. They need a receiver, I think. Let's continue talking about it. More calls on the way here. If you're on hold, sit there. I'll get right to you next segment here. 803-0550 is the number. Sal says he'd be surprised if the Bills don't use all three of their top picks,